All right, everybody, get ready to dive into something really cool today. We're going to explore the life of a tech icon, Steve Jobs, but not the Steve Jobs I think you know.
Right.
We're going way beyond iPhones and Macs and all that. Using someone put together this awesome deep dive, a podcast episode actually, but it's really more than that. It's like a full-on exploration of the lesser-known stuff, experiences that shaped his world. Even, I'll admit, as a longtime Apple fan, I found some real surprises in this material.
Like what's often overlooked is that, Steve Jobs, he wove together these totally different passions into this one singular vision. We always focus on the technology, right? But there's this whole interplay between art, spirituality, even just like his upbringing. And it's crucial, I think, to really get him to get his success.
It's like, what's this thing? Connecting the dots or whatever. Like finding these hidden connections beneath the surface. Take, for example, the fact that Jobs was adopted. It doesn't get a ton of attention. But I got to wonder, how'd that shape him?
No, it's huge. I mean, adoption, it can really instill this drive to prove yourself, to really leave a mark. Makes you wonder if that fueled Jobs' ambition, that relentless push for perfection.
Instead of just following a path, he was driven to make his own, And that desire to create something that mattered, that's huge, that runs through his whole life. But here's the thing. You'd think, right, childhood Steve Jobs must have been all tech, but his dad, Paul Jobs, was a mechanic, right?
Exactly, and that's so important because that seemingly, ordinary detail, it actually reveals a lot about Jobs' design philosophy. Picture this. Young Steve. In his dad's workshop, all that precision, the craftsmanship of classic cars, that's where he first learned about meticulous detail, about building something that wasn't just, functional, but beautiful, elegance.
Sight Jobs. So while other kids were messing with circuit boards, Jobs is soaking up the craftsmanship of 57 Chevy or something. That's a connection I never would have made. And it totally changes how you see those Macs, those iPhones,
Totally. He saw the link, for sure. Jobs talked about it, actually. How, a beautifully engineered car. That informed his vision for Apple products 100%.
Okay.
It's all about that fusion of form and function.
So those early experiences, clearly foundational. But okay, let's talk about something that seems kind of off-brand, right? Jobs dropping out of college. Although, didn't he kind of stay enrolled? Our source material said something like that.
You're right, yeah. He stayed at Reed College, audited classes that caught his interest. And that's where things get interesting. That's where we find one of the most surprising influences. A calligraphy class.
Calligraphy really, okay, gotta admit, this is where I was lost. What could beautiful handwriting have to do with computers? Seems like a hard left turn.
And yet, it totally impacted Apple's future. Years later, designing the Macintosh, those calligraphy lessons came flooding back.
No way.
Oh, yeah. He insisted on beautifully designed, proportional fonts in the Mac's operating system. Seems obvious now, but back then, radical. Computers were for numbers, not art.
So that's the story behind Apple's amazing fonts. Who knew my love for Helvetica could be traced back to, Steve Jobs in calligraphy class?
Right.
It makes you think, what are we doing now? That seems useless, but might be massively important later on,
It's such a good point. Be open to those detours, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the most impactful stuff, you never see it coming. And for Jobs, it wasn't just aesthetics. It was about bringing beauty and humanity to tech.
And that's interesting you say that, because this is another curveball, right? Jobs' journey to India doesn't exactly scream tech revolution, does it?
True. And yet it was so important to him. 1970s, counterculture movements in full swing. Jobs is drawn to Eastern spirituality, Zen Buddhism in particular. And this wasn't just a phase, it was like a guiding principle, his whole life and work.
So you've got this fascinating combo, a total tech whiz, circuits, code, all that, but also seeking enlightenment in ancient philosophy. How does that even compute?
It's like you see these two worlds, technology, Zen Buddhism, so totally separate, right? But Jobs, he brought them together. Zen's all about simplicity, right? Clarity, cutting the excess. That got baked into his whole design thing.
Totally see it in everything they made. The Apple products, clean lines, easy to use. Even the packaging is elegant. Zen minimalism, like Apple's DNA or something.
Exactly. It wasn't just looks, though. It was about how can we make tech more human. Jobs thought it should make life better, not harder.
Which is wild when you think about it. This tech visionary, inspired by ancient philosophy, to create a more mindful future.
And that leads us to something that seems totally different. But it's connected, this idea of stories, connection, Jobs and Pixar.
Oh, right. Pixar, totally different vibe. Yeah, from Apple's minimalism, you got these vibrant, imaginative films. How Jobs, the tech guy, fit into that world.
Easy to forget, Pixar back then, it was a huge risk. Computer animation was just starting, Jobs, fresh out of Apple, all that drama, bets on this tiny division inside Lucasfilm.
Campbell, right. Especially for someone so detail-oriented, what drew him in?
Goes back to what we were saying, I think. That need to connect with something bigger, beyond just the tech itself. Jobs was a tech guy, yeah, but he got stories.
He saw what Pixar could do, the animation, the feels, taking you to other worlds.
Exactly. More impactful than any gadget.
So it was the stories tech let them tell. But what did Jobs actually do? At Pixar, I mean. He didn't animate.
True. But his influence was huge. He shaped the whole culture there. Got the best people, made it a place to be creative. Jobs could spot a good idea a mile away.
He'd nurture it, push people.
Oh, yeah. Get them to do things they didn't think they could.
That same drive for perfection again? From his dad's workshop, right?
Absolutely. He wanted Pixar to be the best storytellers.
Yeah.
Not just tech people, He knew they needed both,
Yeah.
the art and the tech.
So we see this through line his whole life, right?
Yeah.
Dad's shop, the calligraphy, Zen, now Pixar. It's like he was always blending these passions.
Exactly. Connecting those dots that other people miss. That's part of his genius,
It's really something when you see it all laid out like that. We do this thing, we simplify people. Steve Jobs, he's the tech genius, end of story. But this has been a much richer story, right? The craftsman, the seeker,
Yeah.
the storyteller. All those parts of him, they made him who he was.
And that's what makes a deep dive like this so amazing. It reminds us that big ideas, breakthroughs, they don't just appear out of nowhere. It's often like these totally different experiences. They collide and boom, proof that it's good to be curious. Follow your passions. Let them mix it up.
Makes you wonder what we've got going on in our own lives, right? What experiences have we had that seem totally random,
Right.
but actually connect to something bigger?
What dots haven't we connected yet?
That's a great question to leave everyone with, actually. Look at your own life, the things you love. How do they intersect? Maybe there's something there.
Could be something amazing waiting to be discovered.
This deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about. From a mechanics workshop to calligraphy to Zen to Pixar, we really went there uncovering these unexpected influences. Thanks for joining us, exploring the life of Steve Jobs. He's a reminder that the best innovations, they often come from the most unexpected places. Until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting those dots, and keep diving deep.